Many capital cities in Europe are fantastic places to visit. I have visited 29 European capitals, and honestly most of them are certainly worth visiting. So in this video I'm going to give you my top 5 favourite European capital cities that I have visited so far and that I most recommend that you visit. Now, for those of you that have travelled around Europe, do drop in the comment section your favourite capital cities. What would be your top 5 favourite capital cities in Europe, and what would be your favourite one out of your list? So do let me know in the comment section. It will be interesting to hear some of your opinions. And just a little quick bit of promotion that I need to do before I do get into my list. If you go to the description, do check out G Adventures. I'll put the link in the description and in the comment section as well. G Adventures offer group tours and itineraries all around Europe that you can book. If you are planning a backpacking trip around Europe, it can be quite stressful planning your itinerary, but all the stress and worry of planning itineraries goes out the window when you book a trip with G Adventures, because they have the itinerary ready made and you just select the tour and the trip that you want to do. So do check them out. They offer lots of trips all around Europe, so if you are interested in potentially doing a Europe solo trip, I think G Adventures are a great place to start because they do have the trips ready made for you. So again, do check them out. Now, before I do get into my top 5 European capital cities, I will give some honourable mentions because there are many great cities, as I alluded to before, that could be in this top 5 list. You've got London, which is a great place to check out, such a vibrant, such an international feel to the city. You've got Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, which has one of the nicest old towns in Europe. You've got Amsterdam, which is a fantastic place, though very expensive. Lisbon's another really vibrant city as well that I definitely recommend. Prague has some of the best architecture in Europe. Vienna is another lovely city too. I could go on and on with other great European capital cities as well, but these ones just don't quite make my top 5. So let's get into my top 5 right now. Starting at number 5 is Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, Sarajevo is a fascinating city with a fascinating history. Sarajevo was actually the birthplace of the First World War after the Austrian-Hungarian Duke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo. You can actually visit the exact spot where he was killed on the Latin Bridge in the city. And not only that, but the history of the city in the last 30 to 40 years is also very fascinating as well. As many of you will know, Sarajevo was the centre of a war and genocide throughout the 1980s and 1990s. You can see many memorials throughout the city, and also there are museums that I highly recommend that you visit when you are in Sarajevo. I highly recommend you visit the War Childhood Museum. It was one of the most emotional museums that I've ever visited. You should also visit the Museum of Crimes Against Humanity and Genocide as well. Another very harrowing place to visit. However, I promise you that it's not all doom and gloom. Sarajevo has fantastic architecture. It's got a mixture of Austrian style architecture as well as the Ottoman style architecture. Due to the mix of cultures and the history of the city, you'll find mosques, churches, synagogues, and it's the only city in Europe where you can find a mosque, a synagogue, a Roman Catholic church and an Orthodox Christian church all on the same road. Not only that, but the prices you find in Sarajevo are cheaper than the prices that you pay in Western European destinations, and also you'll find fantastic food in Sarajevo. You must try cevapi sausages, they're very tasty. You must try some baklava, some Bosnian coffee, and also some burek as well, which is a pastry that you'll find throughout the Balkan region of Europe. You can get burek filled with either meat or local cheese. And also, if you are into nature, the Bosnian countryside is absolutely fantastic. You've got turquoise rivers and lakes throughout the country, mountains, green spaces, so you also do have great nature nearby Sarajevo too. And you can also take a day trip to the city of Mostar. It's about a 2-hour train journey away from Sarajevo, so Sarajevo is a fantastic European capital city. If you haven't already been, I certainly recommend visiting. It is certainly one of Europe's most interesting cities. And now that leads me on to my 4th favourite European capital city to visit, and that is Athens, Greece. Well, if you love ancient history, then there may be no better city to visit in Europe than Athens. Of course, you've got the Acropolis, the Parthenon, you've got ancient ruins throughout the city, you've got the Olympic Stadium, you've got the Temple of Zeus and so many other ruins. So if you are into history, if you are into seeing ancient ruins, there really is no better capital city for that than Athens. And of course, Greek food, some of the best food you'll have in Europe, really tasty food. Definitely get yourself a Greek salad. Also try some kebab, especially the kebab with bread, yogurt sauce, tomato sauce. This here was very, very tasty. And also don't forget, try gyros, a gyros kebab, really good as well. You've also got some really lovely architecture and buildings within the historic centre. Now, if you do venture outside of the historic centre, it can get a bit shabby, run down, a bit dirty, but if you do stick within the city centre, you've got lovely architecture, little quaint shops, markets. And also, one of the surprising things about Athens is that it's not as expensive as what you may think it would be. It is certainly not as expensive as other major destinations in Europe, such as Paris, London, Rome, Barcelona. It will be cheaper, so you will find cheaper food, cheaper accommodation. For me, Athens is certainly one of those bucket list destinations that you do need to visit if you've not already been. The views you get of the Acropolis, to the food, to the culture, to the history, it is certainly somewhere I recommend. And now that brings me on to the third best European capital city to visit. In my opinion, this is Budapest. Now, in Budapest, you will find some fantastic architecture, but there is a very gritty and vibrant feel to the city as well. The Hungarian Parliament building is arguably the most impressive Parliament building in the entire world. I highly recommend that you take a nighttime boat tour on the River Danube, because you get some fantastic views of the Parliament building lit up under the night sky. You can also book these Danube party boats and party cruises as well, which are really fun to do, so I definitely recommend those if you are looking for a big night out. And also, Budapest does have a fantastic nightlife in general anyway, so it's one of the top places in Europe to go out. Budapest is very famous for its ruin bars, which are basically just these massive bars and clubs with loads of different rooms, loads of different vibes. I definitely recommend you check out Simpler. Now, it is pretty expensive, it's pretty touristy. There are other ones which are more local and better to check out, but Simpler is the most famous one, it is the most well-known one. And even though Budapest does have some of the best nightlife in Europe, don't worry if you're not into nightlife, because you do have other things to do. For example, you can visit Buda Castle, you can see Fisherman's Bastion, you can also go to the thermal baths as well. Now, the most famous thermal bath in the city is the Széchenyi thermal bath, excuse my very bad Hungarian pronunciation. Now, personally speaking, I did actually think this is quite overrated. It was very crowded, very packed. To be honest with you, the thermal baths in Iceland were a lot better than this one, but there are other thermal baths in the city as well that you may want to check out. Now, in Budapest, you've also got a very famous museum called the House of Terror Museum. Now, I didn't have time to go, but all I will say is that if you are going to go, you cannot book tickets online. You can only book tickets in person by queuing up at the museum, and the queues can be very long, so you do need to be aware of that. Now, you will also find some very good food in Budapest as well. I highly recommend that you try some Hungarian langos, which is kind of like this fried dough that you get served with sour cream and cheese. I highly recommend it. You'll see lots of street vendors and takeaway stores selling it. You should also try some chicken paprikash as well when you are in Budapest, and also of course Hungarian goulash. But just be aware that in Budapest city centre you do get some tourist trap restaurants which do charge high prices, so do your research before you go to a restaurant and do check that it is a decent rated restaurant. Budapest is not Europe's most expensive city, but it is certainly not Europe's cheapest city, so prices are kind of average European prices, but obviously do not go to any tourist trap restaurants which overcharge for bad food. And now that leads me on to number 2 in my list of favourite European capital cities to visit, and number 2 is Madrid. Now, again, in Madrid you have fantastic architecture everywhere, Baroque style architecture which is very similar to what you would see in Vienna. And also London as well. It's very similar to London in terms of just the design of the buildings. I did think to myself when I was walking around the city that it does feel like a mini version of London, because like London, you do have a fantastic metro system in Madrid that gets you to everywhere you need to get to. You've got art galleries, you've got parks. I definitely recommend you have a stroll through Park Retiro, very similar to Hyde Park in London, again keeping up with this London comparison. And again, like London, you've got fantastic shopping throughout the city, and also fantastic fantastic nightlife. Madrid is known as one of the best nightlife cities in all of Europe. Got lots of tapas bars, lots of normal bars, lots of clubs you can go to, so it's just a great place to go out. And also, of course, the food in Madrid is fantastic. Spanish food is some of the best food in the world, but one of the top things that I recommend you eat when you are in Madrid is a bocadillo calamares, which is a bread roll filled with calamari. Now, I recommend that you go to get one at somewhere called Bar La Campana. They also sell a chorizo bocadillo as well, which is really tasty as well. You should also try this hornazo de Salamanca as well, which is kind of like this chewy pie filled with meat, pork and chorizo. Really tasty too. And also, I cannot forget, you've got to get yourself some churros with chocolate as well. So for me, Madrid is one of the best places in Europe to visit. You've got everything that you need: great food, great architecture, great art galleries, nightlife, museums, history, people, everything that you can imagine. And the great thing about Madrid is that it is extremely safe compared with many other European capital cities. It's certainly a safer city than London, Paris, Berlin, etc. And also, the prices are not as expensive as the prices you would pay in somewhere like London or Amsterdam or Paris or even Barcelona. So you will save money compared with those other big cities in Europe. And of course, you've also got to go to the Bernabeu Stadium to see the Real Madrid Stadium. You can also check out the Atletico Madrid Stadium too if you are interested. I definitely do recommend at least going on a tour of the Bernabeu. And now finally we get to my number one favourite European capital city to visit. And that number one city is sadly not Bucharest, and sadly it's not going to be Warsaw either. It's not going to be Stockholm, it isn't Dublin, it's not Copenhagen, and it's not going to be Berlin too. It is one city that I have not mentioned so far in this video, and it's probably a city that you may have guessed by now. It is the incredible Italian capital, Rome. What can I say about Rome? You've got incredible architecture, fantastic history, culture, food, amazing restaurants, amazing bars, ancient ruins. Of course, you've got the Colosseum. I highly recommend that if you are going to go to the Colosseum, you book your tickets in advance, because if you are going to go on the day, you may be disappointed. So do book your tickets online. And I'd recommend you do that a good few days or maybe a couple of weeks in advance. You can visit the Pantheon Roman Temple, and of course you can go to the Vatican. It is free to enter into the Vatican City, but if you do want to go to the museums, you do have to pay for that. You do have to get your tickets. I would recommend again you book your tickets online in advance if possible. The Altar of the Fatherland is probably one of the most incredible buildings I've ever seen in my life. It is huge, just amazing. You can walk up to the Spanish Steps and get your picture. You've got fantastic shopping as well, and of course, as I mentioned before, you're going to be eating some of the best food you've ever had in your life. And the great news is you don't need to break the bank, because there are so many fantastic takeaway options. I highly recommend that you go to Pasta Eat, which is like a takeaway pasta restaurant. Now be aware, you're probably going to need to queue up for a very long time, because the queues there can be absolutely horrendous, but it's absolutely worth the wait in my opinion. Got fantastic takeaway pizza. I sadly can't remember where I got this pizza from, but you definitely want to try the ham and pistachio pizza without tomato. Again, fantastic. You can also try the arancini rice balls that come from Sicily, and of course you've got some of the best ice cream in the world. You will honestly get so fat eating the gelato all day long, because you can honestly eat it all day long. You definitely want to go to a Venci store. Venci is a chain of Italian chocolatier and ice cream shops all across Sicily, so definitely make a trip to one of them. The only two disadvantages that I think Rome has is that accommodation and drinks will not be cheap. It is definitely on the pricier side of things. And also, if you are a nightclubbing kind of person who likes crazy nightlife, Rome doesn't have crazy nightlife. It's much more of a bar, cocktail bar, pub kind of place. But for me, if I was only allowed to recommend one capital city in Europe to visit, without a doubt, it would have to be Rome. For me, Rome is the best capital city in Europe for a trip. Now, of course, do drop a comment in the comment section if you do agree or if you disagree with any of my cities. And as I said before, do let me know your favourite European capital cities to visit, and let us know which capital cities you would recommend to visit in Europe. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's very difficult to come up with these lists, because there are so many great capitals in Europe: Berlin, London, Amsterdam. But for me, I think these are my top 5 favourite cities that I visited, and I think that these 5 cities do offer something for everyone. So that's why I'm going to go with Sarajevo, Athens, Budapest, Madrid and Rome as my top 5 cities to visit this year. So I do hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, do remember to click the thumbs up button, hit the like button, it really does help the video, and also subscribe for more travel content for free. So subscribe to the channel, click the like button, click the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next video.